Limits of the Flesh, Chapter 36, Fantasy Fiction by Azazyel. Footsteps muffled by the ORC's expensive carpeting rang out as Akeno stumbled towards me and all but grabbed my shoulder as her head leaned towards me. Her eyes aglow with the very definition of desperation. Akeno then spoke thickly as though the words were choked by her desire for it to be true yet held back by the knowledge that such a convenient thing was unlikely to be possible. "Are you serious, Jake?" I glanced at Ria's looking for help, but Akeno's hands moved off my shoulders and then surprisingly softly clasped my cheeks as she made my eyes lock back onto hers. "Jake, don't pull on my heartstrings with this. I will do literally anything to see my mother amongst the living again," Akeno said bluntly and not even with any form of teasing. She meant she would literally do anything regardless of morals or cost. Yes, if my conjecture from creating my girls is correct, then if the body doesn't fit the soul, even if they never died, their soul will still mutate to fit the form. But vice versa is possible, where if a soul is placed into a perfectly fitting body, then the body would be able to host the soul without issue. I spoke and Akeno's eyes closed before, and her hands threaded themselves around the back of my neck as she leaned forward to rest her forehead on my chest. "Akeno, I promise you I will help use the full power of the Gremory family in order to extract Valerie, as not only can she bring back your mother with Jake's help, but knowing she is still alive I won't be able to look at Gasper and know I allowed his sister is being tormented another day." Ria spoke solemnly and Akeno lifted her head off my chest, and I could tell she was currently overwhelmed with her emotions. "Jake, Akeno, come here. We are going now," Ria said strictly to wake up her queen, and Akeno flinched as her hurried and erratic breathing evened a bit with Rias putting some pressure on her. I led Akeno over to Rias and Rias took my arm. I felt her blue eyes staring at me with an unseen intensity as she came to the realization that even if the Phoenix clan cows were a great gift to the devil race despite their small numbers, me being able to en masse bring people back to life if Valerie could merely bring their spirits from the afterlife could be a game changer. Thus, regardless of my having at best peak high-class power, even with Surzex's genetic potential, I still needed time to adjust my body to be able to carry such powerful magic, as it was nowhere near as simple as just replacing the equivalents of a water bottle for a water tanker within my body to contain the massive difference in magic that Rias and Surzex had between themselves. Not to mention me, who has only been enriching my body for a couple of weeks with magic. Rias finally closed her eyes, and I felt her magical power flood the surroundings as a much more dense Gremory magical circle formed beneath us. Finally, with a blinding flash of crimson light, we were torn from Earth, and after a couple of seconds of the blinding light searing my eyes even after I closed them, we arrived in Hell. We had arrived in an actually landing room or something, as the floor we landed upon had the Gremory magical crest engraved upon it with some kind of magical glowing metal that probably helped the Gremory family members teleport between realms. "Jake, and especially you, Akeno. Just allow the family dinner to go without incident, and then I can get a meeting with my brother, and I am sure he will be willing to help us," Ria said, and I nodded as it made sense. But Akeno had to get the last word in, as it were. "Just like how your brother helped with your engagement." Even Akeno flinched as she realized her words were far out of line as she refused to meet Rias's eyes when Akeno's king wordlessly stared at her. "Akeno, I love you like my own sister, and so I know you are highly emotional right now. But I can't help if you snap and say something stupid to my family or Surzex, and this plan happens to push the resurrection of your mother back." Akeno's head snapped up at Rias in surprise and a bit of betrayal, but Rias only raised an eyebrow. "Behave, Akeno. I will do everything in my power to return your mother back to life, as I know you would do the same if our situations were reversed. But as I said, behave," Ria said bluntly, and Akeno swallowed, nodding as she knew her previous comment was out of line, and although the Gremory family wouldn't keep her from seeing her mom, they could just as easily teach her a lesson by making her wait. With Akeno's mind cleared, she seemingly took the position of simply keeping her silence as Rias gave her sister in all but blood a quick hug and whispered something into her ear before she stepped back and took a deep breath. "All right, let's get going to see my family," Ria spoke with a bit of forced cheer as she walked towards the landing room's doors. Even as Rias approached the large double doors, they swung open at the behest of two silent maids that pushed them open to allow Rias and us entry. "Thank you," I said to the maids, and they smiled, nodding back to me as they took out some dusters and began cleaning off the magical pad we landed upon. If they were doing anything else I couldn't see, as Rias took my arm into her arms so I could escort her through her own undoubtedly massive home. Rias then led me and Akeno, who walked behind me and Rias, through the massive Gremory estate, and its size was mind-boggling ridiculous. It was seemingly a dozen convention centers put together in the shape of a mansion/castle, and when I asked Rias why this place was so huge, she smiled wryly. It's not even about having too much money or even wanting to show off our wealth. It's just that devils get bored of their homes, and rather than demolish their older homes they just keep adding more onto it every few decades, and with my parents being a couple thousand years old. Rias shrugged in a what-can-you-do manner. This massive estate was honestly a perfect example of the wealth and connections that the Gremory family has accumulated over the millennia. Here we are. Rias smiled as we reached another set of massive double doors. The southwest informal dining room, Rias spoke, and just as she said there was a small brass plaque on the side of the doors labeling the room past the doors as the informal dining room. As we approached the double doors once again, they swung open to welcome us, but this time rather than maids there was a regal man who looked to be only within his 20s, seemingly with slightly lighter red hair and a matching red goatee, that pushed open the door. "Rias, my darling, you have come home." Rias's father spoke with charisma rolling off of him, and I saw where Surzex got his from, as they had a similar presence. "Akeno, my dear, it is good to see you again, and Jake. I welcome you within my family. And thank you for standing with my daughter during her raiding game." Zeoticus Gremory spoke, and I had to blink as honestly. I was a bit poisoned on fanfics of her father being some controlling asshole. "It's a pleasure to meet you," I said simply but truthfully, and then the man actually stuck his out to me to shake as an equal, and instinctively I took it. In that split couple of seconds, I took the man's hand. I fully mapped out his body, and relying on my prior example of Rias's Gremory bloodline, I think I learned a bit more about the Gremory probability/luck bloodline. But after I let go of the man's hand, I wore a severe frown as I looked at the man. "Is something the matter, Jake?" he asked, also frowning, as my respectful smile dropped into a terrible frown and I had to consider how to explain what I had seen within his body. "It would be for the best if we skip this dinner and you and I speak with Surzex alone. You have seen me flip Riser's gender perfectly and stably just by touching him for a half a minute. You have a problem within you, sir," I said, frowning as I found what I thought to maybe be the devil's sleeping sickness, as I could see the process in which his mind was shutting down permanently with each deep sleep cycle, dragging him deeper into a coma. There was that literally life-ending issue. And then there were the fucking highly venomous tiny tablets that were somehow inside his stomach that was being very, and I mean extremely slowly dissolved in the man's stomach. If my brief glance told me anything, I believed the tablets with whatever was within them would take like half a year or something fully dissolved, after allowing the minute toxins that escaped the dissolving pills to wreak havoc as the man sleeping in the devil's sleeping sickness progressed. "Rias, please take Akeno and spend some time with your mother. She is in the next door resting room with Graphia and Milicus," Zeoticus spoke, taking a deep breath as he realized I had found something within that would be problematic. Without waiting for Rias to answer, I entered the dining room with Surzex looking up from the end of the table, seeing me and his father finally enter. "Ah, where is Rias and the others?" he asked genially as his father took a seat beside his son and I took a seat in front of the two red-haired men. "We needed to have an important conversation with them out of the picture, so we don't have to deal with them getting emotional," Zeoticus said bluntly before he looked to me. "Well, please explain what you have found." He spoke calmly despite how I would have been probably freaking out if I was in his place.